It's all the latest for you then. From our international affairs desk, Leila Jacinto is joining me here on set. Leila, day 4 now of the Iran war. What would you say are the geostrategic lessons we're learning so far? I mean, is the fog of war, if you like, starting to lift at least?
We're still in the fog of war, but day 4 brings some pretty important geostrategic lessons that we are already getting. The first geostrategic lesson, of course, is an old lesson of history that has not been heeded, which is a war can draw in all sorts of countries with mission creep. And day 4 sees Europe being drawn into the war in the Middle East. And it's putting focus on the post-war map that was essentially drawn by the winners of World War II, the US and the old European colonial powers. And so we're suddenly looking at the bases that these powers have thousands of kilometers away in waters where they have no coastline. And they are spending a lot of military hardware right now in this zone. Because before Saturday, the understanding of the new world order was that there would be regional powers, regional hegemonies looking after their own strategic interests, right? So for the past more than a decade, the US has been signaling that their own national security interests are in the Pacific zone to contain a rising China. Barack Obama, so this predates President Trump, talked about famously the pivot to Asia. Europe has a war on its own continent, and it is increasingly waking up to its own security deficiencies, the lack of military hardware, production capabilities, stockpiles. And now these powers are being sucked back into this very important choke point of the Middle East, where you have Arab Gulf states, basically these countries, and especially for the Arab Gulf states, the post-World War order, basically, with the Sunni Arab Gulf states, was an oil and energy for security deal. So these US bases on their land were supposed to provide security. Instead, it has turned into a target. And these Arab Gulf states are paying heavily. Literally. So all these missile interceptions, defense systems, even fighter jets, the bill is being foot by these Arab Gulf states. In the old days, these Arab Gulf states viewed Israel as an essential but not overt partner in trying to contain Iran. But now they really have no choice but to get in on the side of the US, Europe, and essentially Israel, that is redrawing the Middle East map. So, I mean, this is really seismic changes, and it's just 4 days into the war.
Yeah, you talked there about the bases being hit. We saw just before we spoke to you as well that US embassy being hit in Riyadh. I mean, do you think the Gulf states were taken by surprise here? I mean, what are the main takeaways, if you like, for those, let's not forget, oil and gas-rich states there in the Persian Gulf?
Look, Stuart, it is the ultimate nightmare for the Gulf Arab states. And we're talking here about the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is made up, and we have a map, that shows you the placement of these 6 countries, basically staring across this narrow Persian Gulf at a gigantic Iran. And so, within the GCC, the GCC, by the way, was founded in 1981, which is just 2 years after the Iranian Revolution, when in Iran, they saw a toppling of their own monarchy for a republic, so to speak. Now, the GCC has had its ups and downs in the past 4 decades. There's famously the Saudi-Qatari balance of power strains. But over the past few years, relations between the GCC have been improving. Oman and Qatar have always had good relations with Tehran. Saudi relations were actually improving with Tehran. I mean, these are this has always been the 2 opposing powers in the region. And if you remember, in 2023, China actually brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Those relations were broken in 2016. So the Gulf was moving to an area, into a position where they could manage Iran. Now, suddenly, they are being forced to confront Iran. If you see the recent statements that are coming out of the GCC, they are very long on condemning the treachery of Iran. Their statements are basically saying, we were not allowing the US and Israel to use our lands to fly, their fighter jets, and we are now being targeted. So the fact is, for the Gulf states, what's going to happen is that at some point, this war will end. We don't know when, but it will end. And the US will retract all its military hardware from the region. What the Gulf states are left with is their geography. Iran is going nowhere, and they are facing a giant neighbor, while they are sitting in the camp, essentially, as Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is redrawing the map of the Middle East. And they have their own domestic people, their populace, to look out for, while the Israeli-Palestinian issue, which is a very emotional issue, is absolutely not addressed. So massive changes here.
You talked about the war coming to an end. One thing we haven't talked about today is where it does come to an end. I mean, President Trump has told the Iranian people that almost it's up to them now to finish the job, if you like. I mean, is that really likely to happen? I had a guest here yesterday, an Iranian, who said people can't rise up. They'll get shot if they rise up. That's not going to happen.
Yes, I mean, and part of the problem is that, as with every country, one tends to focus on, the areas of the country and the groups in the country that gets media attention. And this is much more so in Iran, where, we don't really, we don't have access to Iran. Now, the problem in Iran, which the Gulf states understand very well, is that it is a huge country. It shares land borders with 7 different countries. It is a multi-ethnic country, and they don't have a united opposition, right? You have ethnic groups, minority ethnic groups that actually share borders with other countries. So you have the Kurds in the northwest sharing borders with Iraq and Turkey. You have Baloch in the southeast sharing a border with Pakistan. Some of these ethnic groups have militant armed wings. They have not been used as yet. But these are the groups that have armed wings, and they see an opportunity right now, which Trump provided for them. For the heartland, which is mostly the Persian ethnic group, the opposition is completely divided. We have been focused a lot on the son of the former Shah, Reza Pahlavi, and there have indeed been cries for him to come back. But the thing is, these ethnic groups will not accept a Pahlavi monarchy. They remember the decades, in some cases even a century of oppression under the Pahlavi monarchy. And some of my Kurdish friends are telling me what they fear the most now is a severe crackdown on the Kurds, because the narrative in Tehran has always been that these are separatist groups. While these groups, want to gain some rights and some federalism, some level of autonomy, Tehran doesn't see it that way. And what we have seen is the regime in Tehran so far is united. Despite all the hits it has taken, it established a transitional authority very quickly. How it will manage to hold this vast country of more than 90 million people together, we have no idea. For the Gulf Arab point of view, we're looking at potentially insecurity, which will affect the region and ultimately a very important choke point of the globe.
Leila, thanks so much, Leila.